Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I am Krina Banyaga and I am tasked to report about visuality and reality. So first off, we will define the two of them. For visuality, it is the process of sighting or looking that is more purposeful, critical, and direction-oriented than seeing. So this concept or this whole definition is what our subject is trying to tell us since the beginning, that we should not settle into just seeing objects, seeing visual images, but we should be more into critical thinking, into making a concrete description whenever we see things, paintings, or other forms of visual images. For reality, it is the state of things as they are rather than as they are imagined to be. So reality is simply what things are right at that moment. First concept or first topic is about visual regime. So to understand visual regime, let's define first what is regime. So regime basically is a law or set of rules or a system to be followed. So when we say visual regime, it is a set of rules or a system that we follow whenever we describe a visual image. So visual regime determines the extent to which something will make meanings and how that meaning will be taken seriously. So since we base our description in a description of a visual image, we base it on regime. So that regime, of course, will determine how we will make those meanings or how we will make those description. So to be understood fully, the general visual regime in 20th and 21st centuries can be summarized or can be marked by technological sophistication. So when we say technological sophistication, it means that our visual images are heavily influenced by technology and we are very educated and we are very familiar with that. So our images are highly or heavily edited, our videos. We have these things called digital art and animation. So because of this, there is tendency or a big tendency that our images are more likely to be less truthful since they can be altered seamlessly or easily, and visual hoaxes are easily perpetrated. So when we say visual hoaxes, these are visual products or visual images or other forms of it that are purposely made to trick our eyes or to trick viewers. So a very famous case of visual hoax is about the Cotlingley Ferry. So when we see in the what we see in the pictures are two children who took photos and they purposely put fairies in it to trick viewers or to trick um, adults. So these photos actually were taken a century ago in 1917. So softwares or applications of today are um, not yet famous in that time, but then they were able to edit these edit these pictures. So though these are poorly edited, somehow many adults were still um, fooled by the pictures. Though these photos were taken a century ago, there are still adults from our current area who was actually fooled. So for example, is Arthur Don Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is actually the creator of Sherlock Holmes. So he is an example of a current person that was actually fooled by this picture. So this story sparked a number of novels and films, including 2 movies produced in 1997, Charles Sturridge's Fairy Tale, A True Story, and Nick Willing's Photographing Fairies, which is also titled Apparition. So when um, it is actually accepted or understandable if some people in that generation where these photographs were taken were actually fooled. But in today's era, siguro we are educated enough to be skeptical about things that are digitally altered. So I have some examples here of digitally altered images. The first one is Kim Kardashian's photo. So the left one is the edited one. The left one is the original one, and the right picture is the edited one. Same as this photo of Angelina Jolie, which obvious altered edits can be observed. And for the third one is Zendaya's pixel. For this example, the left one is actually the edited and the right one is the original. So Zendaya actually called out the magazine who released these photos because these digitally altered images, as frequent or as familiar as we can be with them, these images actually has negative effects in our not just in women but in everybody's confidence and self-esteem, because these photos um, says, or what it says to us is that it suggests that these photos are what the society really accepts when it comes to physical features. So aside from digitally altered images, we we also have digital remastered piece or so. When we say digital remastering or remastered clips, it means that these are pre-recorded audios or videos, but and they were edited. So best examples are Tupac Shakur in Coachella 2012 and Don Rickles in Toy Story Toy Story 4. So for Tupac Shakur, yeah, so Tupac actually died more than a decade ago, and in 2012 Coachella viewers audiences were amazed and were shocked that he actually performed on stage with Snoop Dogg in the form of hologram. So the hologram were based on pre-recorded videos of Tupac. Next example is Sir Don Rickles. So Don Rickles is the actor who voiced Mr. Potato Head in the Toy Story 4. So just a moment before Toy Story 4 would be recorded or would be filmed, unfortunately Don Rickles died, so he hasn't recorded yet any of his parts. What the production did was to compile his previous recording to make dialogues for Mr. Potato Head in Toy Story 4. So imagine we can still use the voices of our dead artists, dead actors in future movies. So how do we react to this? What we see? So the best example is whenever we see movies or watch movies in cinema with 3D screen, we still actually react or duck whenever an arrow flies out, as if it flies out of the 3D screen. Or another example is whenever we see some strange scene in the movie, we still gasp about it. So why do you think we still react that way even though we are very educated na edited lang sila? So this belief is based in part on common sense and familiarity. So if we if we have our first glance in this picture, the Trafalgar Square, we immediately know what is happening in the picture. There are infrastructures, there are people, and there are birds. So why Why do you think it is easy for us to say or describe the picture? It is because we have our common sense and we are very much familiar of the objects and symbols in the picture. We encounter people every day, we see birds every day, and we see infrastructures every day. So we are very confident that we can describe immediately what's going on in the picture. But this confidence can be questioned by some photographs, the what we call art photographs. So they are, of course, they are still pictures, but we have difficulty on describing them. So for example is this picture of landscape. So in the first look, of course, we can't identify what's going on. So this is in fact a very close-up photograph of the bowl of a hookah or a water-cooled smoking pipe, but the everyday eye cannot easily get this close to the object or frame it in a such way. So these cases questions the belief of familiarity and common sense because the digital camera or the digital camera used in taking this picture saw saw this object um, in a different way than our naked eye will see it. So we are not familiar with this picture. That's why we can't easily describe what's going on in that image. So what does this case suggest in this belief, in the belief of familiarity? So what it suggests is that we can actually rely on the belief of familiarity and common sense whenever we establish reality. Kay naa ganiing ani na mga case which is we can't easily describe what's going on. So but actually not all pictures are produced to establish reality. Some reality since reality can be different from culture to culture, era to era, and from time to time. So we will now discuss different natures of reality based on different aspects. So first off is religious institutions. So for them, usually, they insist upon the transcendental nature of reality, or the everyday phenomenal world is considered either a stage on a journey to a more profound reality, say heaven, or simply an illusion, a kind of false consciousness that has to be overcome in order to achieve enlightenment. So for them, for religious institutions, these are very familiar to us. For them, the true nature of reality is or can be found or can be achieved transcendental world transcendental world. So whenever we say transcendental, it means that it's extraordinary or it's beyond our comprehension. So for them, diba, almost all religious institution like Christianity and Islam suggest that we follow Bible or Quran in our way of living, in our lifestyle, for us to go to heaven. So ang heaven in that context is the true nature of reality, and what's going on here on earth is just a stage or just a journey or simply an illusion na we need to experience for us to really achieve the true enlightenment or the true nature of reality. Next one is the true nature of reality for science. So for science, it tends to understand what is real as that which can be observed, demonstrated, and proven. So for science, somewhat opposite into sa religion. We are very much familiar with the process of science before. So in science, before proving or before saying that something is real, we go on into a process. We first identify a problem or something that needs to be proven, and then we perform experiments about it. We analyze data before saying that it is true nature of reality. So that's for science. So when it comes to media, they use terms like reality in a rather nebulous manner, equating reality with what is happening in the real world, with what everyone thinks, or with the voice of the people. So basically, for media, the true nature of reality is what the society accepts or what everyone thinks. For visual culture, the term reality is usually a shorthand way of saying that some representation is true to life. So for visual culture, their nature of reality in supports the notion that nature of reality changes from culture to culture and from era to era. So for example, these two paintings, the first one is painting of Johannes Vermeer, and the second one is by Norman Rockwell. So we can argue that these two these two paintings were painted to resemble reality, but then they don't resemble each other. So the works hardly resemble one another. They do, though, resemble something individually. And in this, you can identify an idea about reality and visual culture that has been central to theories of visuality and culture across Western history. Its basis is the ancient Greek notion of mimesis, or the imitation of reality, which in effect posits that the objects we see are only imitations of an ideal form. So if we base it on the notion of mimesis, though both of these paintings are different from each other, um, the symbols in it individually were painted as an imitation of the ideal form of reality of the painter. So in addition, in the 20th century example, which is the fairy photographs hoax, the point was to trick people into seeing something that wasn't there, but under the principle of mimesis, the point is not to trick the eye into thinking it sees reality, but to persuade viewers that there are ideals to which we can aspire. So for mimesis, so ang pictures or photographs are not made to trick the viewers, but actually it influences us to think more, to to think more, or to imagine more some ideals can be true nature of reality. So for example of fairy photographs, so if if in the first glance, of course, you can say na a fairy, it is a trick because fairies were not proven that they are real. But if we base it on the notion of mimesis, we can imagine more that maybe actually fairies do exist in this world. So Western visual culture, its emphasis is on form and also out of the Christian tradition, with its emphasis on the centrality of faith, or the evidence of things not seen. This was especially evident in visual works and in visual interpretation during the medieval and Renaissance periods, because in each period, visual culture, both natural and of human production, was considered to be there to reflect or to tell something about God. So simply things, visual objects, visual images, the meaning of them are always connected somehow to God. So in the Christian era, the important issue was how to decipher visual objects in the everyday world in terms of God's code. So just like what I've said, everything, every object, a sculpture, or maybe a vase, a painting, a picture, was not simply put in that place to enjoy its beauty or for pleasure, but for us, or for the people in that era to have a description of that object in terms of God's code. Every um every object has its literal meaning based on its function, but in that era dapat naa siya other meaning that is connected into somewhat God or any God's story. As an example, in that era, white is not just a tone or color, but is a symbol of light and goodness. And for black, it is evil. Then a candle, when we say candle, its literal meaning is illumination or light. But for that era, burning candle serves us, or it symbolizes eternity and divine salvation. So maybe that's why candles are very prominent in our churches. And guttering candle means transitory nature of life. So guttering candle means somewhat it's about to die. So it's other meaning aside from its literal meaning is transitory nature of life. So that would be all for visuality and reality, and I hope you learned something about my report.